A very good morning to all of you. I am Sonali Vyas, Associate Director at Safetipin, and I'll be with you throughout this day with you. And I want to start today with a quote, a very well-known quote from Jan Gehl. It says that first we shape the cities and then they shape us. A quote perfectly for today. Today we are gathered here to celebrate a significant milestone, the 10th anniversary of Safetipin. Our organization has been working towards reshaping cities towards gender-responsive policy and practice. This day-long event is a gathering of diverse urban stakeholders, including policymakers, civil society organizations, youth groups, women's groups, and academics. Together, we will engage in insightful discussions, share knowledge, and work towards shaping a future that involves everyone and leaves no one behind. Today, our conference is not limited by national boundaries. We are honored to have speakers joining us from across India and around the world, bringing their global experiences and expertise to the table. We are grateful to the partnership with GIZ, Fondation Botnar, and Women Mobilize Women. Thank you all for joining us today, and let's make the most of the day with meaningful discussion and exchange of ideas. With this, it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Kalpana Viswanath, co-founder and CEO of Safetipin, to kickstart the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonali. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, and really a warm welcome. I am so delighted to see all of you here this morning. So many partners, friends, supporters, collaborators, fellow travelers on this journey towards a gender-just, gender-responsive, and gender-transformative cities as we move forward. You know, this I'm delighted that we have Ambassador Lakshmi Puri with us as our keynote and our chief guest today. She is a champion of women's rights, safe cities, and many of us have worked with her in the past. So thank you so much, ma'am, for being with us. So, day before yesterday, I was coming to India Habitat Center, and I crossed this bus number 620. And it brought back a memory, which I do want to share because, you know, very often we tend to forget that cities are actually repositories of our lives, of our memories. So I moved to Delhi in 35 years ago, in 1988. To study, and I was at that time living in an area called Vijay Mandal Enclave, which is near Haus Khas. And I had about a month before the university was opening. So I would get up every morning, walk to the Haus Khas bus terminus, and take this 620 bus, which would take the scenic route to Connaught Place, which was the center of the city in those days. It was my first time in North India. I didn't even know very much Hindi. But every day I would take this bus, get off at a different stop, and walk the city. And that memory, I realize now I had forgotten that memory in the work of that we do, that we're constantly finding the problems that we have to fix in the city. We forget the beauty of the city. We forget the fact that the city is where we are born, we make friends, we study, we fall in love, we have children, we have fights, we have heartbreaks, everything. But the city is the space where it happens. So I think, I wanted to share that with you because I feel sometimes we forget to talk about that. And it reminded me of a very wonderful TED talk that the Nigerian feminist writer Chimamanda Adichie did, saying the danger of a single story. So I think even for us, we should be wary of single stories because the city and our experience and life in a city can never be a single story. Even and in the work that we've done in the past 10 years, as we've traveled around the country, we have seen that despite all the restrictions, despite sometimes poor infrastructure, women and girls find ways to make their lives in cities. So we need to move beyond any discourse and narrative of victimhood, which is not to say there's a lot to be done, I think, but I just wanted to start off with that. So Safetipin is 10 years old today, and we started actually with a safety app 10 years ago. So even for us, it's been a real evolution in this journey. And I would say there are sort of 4 elements of Safetipin and our work that have shaped us. So we started off as a technology in order to generate data, right? So data is central to what we do and who we are. But what did we want to do? Collect data on? We wanted to collect data on the confluence of gender and urbanization, cities, women, girls, and recognizing that there are others who are also excluded in cities, others on the gender binary, people with disabilities, older people, certainly recognizing all the intersectionalities in the identity of being a woman and gender identities. We began with a safety app, but we were very clear that technology was not an answer. Technology is an enabler. And we have seen that in the past 10 years, not only in India, but globally, that you can use technology to make a difference as long as you don't think that technology without any social input can make the difference. And I think that is important to center stage. And what we did with our Safetipin app, our first app, was to translate the lived experience of women in cities into data that could be used by policymakers, right? So women were every day, as they were walking the streets, they were experiencing good, bad, neutral experiences. And the app tried to get through the safety audit, which is a very powerful feminist tool that has been used in countries across the world to try and say, what makes you feel unsafe in the cities? You can't fix a problem until you define the problem. And we wanted to say that women and young women and girls are actually experts of their own city. And you have to get the data from their experience before you can translate it. But then data, when we come to data, it is whose data, whose voices are represented, which data is given more priority. Are numbers more important? Are stories more important? They're both important. And I think at Safetipin, we've tried to find that balance between numbers and stories, because both are important for building the narrative, the discourse of what it means to be a woman, a young woman, a girl in a city. So the urban fabric that we're looking at for gender transformation, our work and the work of all of you around this room is really looking at how do we make cities more gender responsive? How do we make urban systems, urban policies, services more gender responsive? So there are 2 broad kind of experiences that we have to address. One is the experience of violence and the experience of fear. As much as the violence, it is the fear which determines how women think they can move around a city. And I don't want to get too much into data, but there have been interesting statistics. A 2021 study across 140 cities, 52% of the women highlighted that they turned down opportunities of education and employment due to lack of safety. A 2017 research in Delhi showed that women were willing to travel 27 minutes more a day because they thought it was a safer route. In Bangalore, in 2020 studies showed that only 2% of women commuters wanted to travel after 9 o'clock at night. And even in Mumbai, which we often feel is a much safer city, studies showed that 20% women commuters spend 21% more money on transport than men because of the multiple activities of care and their fear and concern for personal safety. So, it is a It is a real problem, the lack of safety, and I think that is something we recognize. But it is not safety alone. It is, when we look at building gender-responsive systems in cities, we're looking at something more. And I think one of the things we have realized in the past few years is that we must foreground the economy of care, the mobility of care, and the ethics of care in our cities. COVID really, I think, unpacked that for us. We recognize, especially in India, many people who are not often involved in the work of everyday care were suddenly thrown into everyday care work. And we realized how much work it was and how it was the bulwark of what everything is built upon. There are many statistics. There is one statistic that says that an average Indian woman spends 297 minutes a day on unpaid care work, while men spend less than 30. Another study puts it at 3 billion hours of unpaid care work a day that Indian women and girls are performing. So these are big numbers. All of us have received care in our life. And many of us are caregivers. And I think the valuing of the work of care, acknowledging the care economy, would mean redistribution of the work of care beyond households to communities, the market, and the state. And I think that's what we need to do very centrally. So last year, in recognition of this sort of widening of our perspective, we launched something called the She Rises framework. You have a copy in your bags, which is for responsive, inclusive, safe, and equitable spaces and services in cities. Safety is one element, but we have also realized that we must privilege other elements along with safety. And it's a multidimensional perspective towards gender transformation, which includes things like infrastructure, streets, transport, childcare, other services, housing, public toilets. We always say public toilets is a feminist issue. If you don't have public toilets, how are women going to move around the city? Addressing social norms, education. And we realize that young women are really brimming with aspirations to realize their dreams, to study, to work, and to be leaders in our cities, in our country. So this assessment framework, we actually translated it into a set of indicators and an assessment framework. And we are really happy to say that we've partnered with the Smart Cities Mission and the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs to pilot test this in 6 cities. And it has shown us, it's given us a good sense that data is being collected, and it's possible to collect this data. We have Mr. Kunal Kumar here. He will share with us that they have recently put a lot of data into the public domain with the Urban Outcomes Framework, and that's a significant moment, I think, for all of us working on urban data, because we find it difficult to get data, and I think it's really valuable if data is made open for all of us. So really, I don't want to sort of keep you between hearing the rest of the wonderful speakers today, but it is, cities are living, pulsating spaces, as I said, of relationships. And as we move towards the journey of gender transformation, we will need to be bold and innovative. We'll have to think out of the box. We'll have to do things in ways that we haven't done before. We'll have to be willing to make mistakes. We'll have to be a little kind to each other in the process as well, and not judge each other all the time every time we make a mistake, because with social media nowadays, it's so quick. We are so quick to pull someone else down that I think we need to move to a more reflective way of working. I think it will benefit all of us. And I want to end with the words of Italo Calvino, the Italian writer, who says, "Cities, like dreams, are made of desires and fears. You take delight not in the 7 or 70 wonders, but in the answers that it gives to your questions." Thank you. So I'm now delighted to say that it is time for us to introduce Ambassador Lakshmi Puri, former Assistant Secretary General at the United Nations and former Deputy Executive Director of UN Women. Ambassador Lakshmi Puri is a former IFS officer and ambassador. She has actively engaged in multilateral diplomacy since 1981. She also served at the United Nations for 15 years as Director, International Trade Division, UNCTAD, and later as Assistant Secretary General, United Nations, and the founding Deputy Executive Director of UN Women. She is a distinguished fellow of Indian Association of International Studies and the recipient of the prestigious Eleanor Roosevelt Prize for Human Rights. When she was in UN Women, many of us worked with her. We were truly inspired by the amount of hard work, time, and commitment. I still remember, ma'am, that you were there at the Women's Assembly till the last 6:30, and you were there from 9 in the morning. I think it's very precious to have people who walk along with you and take that journey and teach us so much, learn from us, and we truly can make the journey towards transforming our city. So I welcome you on stage, Ambassador. Please. Sonali. Wow, that was a sprightly.
Why wouldn't I be sprightly to be back with all of you? I'm truly inspired to be back here with, as you said, fellow travelers, collaborators, friends, co-conspirators, all of that. And you need that sisterhood and brotherhood. Thank you for all the men who are here and who support this mission of gender-responsive urbanization and gender-responsive cities. I congratulate Safetipin, led by my dear friend Kalpana Viswanath, and of course, my other friend, which is who has been leading the Jagori movement. And I see other women leaders here, Meenakshi Gopinath, and also very much welcome our participants from a minister from Mexico and Germany and others, for putting together this very important conference, I believe, to harvest all the work. And as you rightly said, and I think the minister from Mexico mentioned, to make visible what, why, what, and how of the gender-responsive urbanization agenda. So this is something which is, I attach great importance to. And as when I was with UN Women, I have had the privilege of being engaged with more than 50 cities, of engendering more than 50 cities, and in developing a gender transformative framework and working with all these organizations and with the civil society, because I remember in all the conferences that we used to go to with Habitat, we really sought to bring together the intersection of gender equality and sustainable urbanization. I think those are the two conjunctions that we try to bring together. And about, as you have said, this conference is about gender transformative policy and practice for safe and sustainable urban development. And I want to add, for, by, and of women and girls. So I'm also happy that the Government of India and the Ministry of Urban Development has invested or is invested in this project so deeply. I remember when the Smart Cities was being launched. The then minister was called, and we, with UN Women, we organized an interaction to say, please, at that time, I think the blueprints were being made, and we said, please make sure that you mainstream gender throughout the conception of that program. But we have come a long way since then, and I know that you are working very closely, and civil society is working very closely to make sure that this is taken forward. And then we have had also the G20. India's G20 presidency has really prioritized women-led development as a theme of its presidency. And also that has now been that concept of women-led development, whether it is in cities, whether it is in rural areas. Women-led development has been consecrated in the G20 DNA now. And so not only that, along with that, the commitment to make the cities of tomorrow inclusive, resilient, and sustainable with the adoption of the principles of financing them. So again, this conjunction of women-led development and the cities of tomorrow. And of course, we have to transform the cities of today. So it set targets. If just very quickly, I will talk about G20 because it prioritized, but also set targets for halving digital divide by 2030, achieving labor force participation, divide reduction target by 2025, which was set, I believe, in Germany, if I remember right, in the G20 meeting in Germany, and a comprehensive socio-economic rights agenda that has to be worked out predominantly in the cities. And a new working group on women's empowerment has been established in the G20, which is going to, of course, mainstream gender into other work streams, but also monitor the implementation of all the commitments. So this is something that is going to really drive the gender-responsive urbanization agenda by the most powerful economies, 20 economies of the world, but also most consequential and influential countries, because then it sends messages to the world, to the global south, and also sets up the necessary political will. Now, I think, I believe that the inexorable, flow of a tide of urbanization is more an opportunity than a risk for gender equality and women's empowerment. And I say this because the future of humanity is undoubtedly urban, and I think all of you know the statistics that by 2050, more than 70% of the world's population will be women, some 3.3 billion, and will live in urban areas. So now the question is, in many ways, cities could be more conducive to the new normal of gender equality and women's empowerment. And it will help it flourish, to take hold, freed from the encrustations of patriarchal norms on gendered roles and on harmful practices like child marriage, honor killings, dowry, gender-based violence. So that is something that we have to try and make urbanization about. getting rid of these encrustations. Equally, we need to avoid the risks that rural gender unequal norms and patterns will get transmuted to urban settings, and which is happening in some cases, with additional concerns about the safety and security of women and girls amid rising crime, including against women in cities. So there is this, duality in and both the risk and opportunity, which we have to really address. And women living in poverty and informal settlements, the slums as they call them, but I prefer to call them informal settlements, and those with disabilities, young people, the aged, LGBTQ, and women across intersectional identities are particularly vulnerable. And Kalpana, you referred to that, because that is the scope also of this gender transformative, because it's not exclusive, it is something about being inclusive of addressing all these doubly disadvantaged groups. Now, globally and in India, challenges to SDG 5, Global Gender Equality Compact, what I call the Global Gender Equality Compact, that has evolved over the last decades, and which is really the climax in the adoption of Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development and SDG 5. Now, the challenges to that abound everywhere. Only 88, as much as 88% of the targets, the 54 targets of SDG 5 are off track. That's where we are halfway through our journey. And there are many issues we all know of. Several barriers persist, deep-rooted biases and norms against women and girls. I was told about blowback happening, even when we make progress, 2 steps forward and then 1 step backward, that kind of thing happening. Inadequate nutrition, health access, including sexual and reproductive health services, skewed political representation, gender gaps in access, ownership, and control over economic resources and financial resources, and jobs, wages, insufficient legal protection, huge burden of care work. And I really appreciate your emphasis on that, because when I was at UN Women, we had very much focused on the issue of care work and absolutely essential element. And that's why we had, one of our big victories in SDG 5 was to get a target on unpaid care and domestic work. It's valuing of it, the redistribution of it, and the provisioning of it. So I think these are the elements that really need to be also included in any urban transformation, gender responsive urban transformation. And then, of course, there is the issue of, how women's labor force participation and mental health is affected or by the issues of care work. Then we have learned from several decades about how gendered experiences, and you very much referred to experiences and impacts, play out in cities. Women differentially, in trade, you have a concept of special and differential treatment. So here, because there is a differential experience, because there is a disadvantaged, I don't want us to be victims. Yes, women should not be victims. But they are disadvantaged in many ways, and that is a fact. Because they differentially combine productive and household work and are challenged by the multiple use of time and space, resulting in stress and time poverty. We, of course, many women across the world suffer from multidimensional poverty, but time poverty is something which is across class. One may find more women in the public space, in parks and open spaces, looking after children, attending to the disabled and senior citizens, while balancing time to fetch water, run errands, manage home-based or street-based product, or of course in the villages also farm work, and so on. So how can we transform these gender unfair social norms in society and bridge the prevalent gender gaps in neighborhood services? And I think your data that you're talking about and the stories you bring will, I hope, throw some light on this gendered experience and what should be the gendered response to these kind of challenges. Mobility concerns. I was very intrigued by the title of Women Mobilize Women, and I discovered that it's also about mobility. And you have already, Kalpana ji, set out all the challenges, so I will not go through it again, that how mobility, the safety of mobility for women and girls impacts their education and job and other choices, and how that needs to be addressed. And then the ability to negotiate their presence and citizenship in public life, adversely impacting their overall development, education, jobs, leisure, and political participation, I may add. Now, if gender equality is to be recognized, I think what the mindset shift that has been happening, I'm happy to know, is that we are no longer looking at the city from the perception of a young, productive male. But we are looking at it, hopefully increasingly so, from the perspective of more, we are trying to recenter and meet the diverse needs of women, children, older people, all of whom are equally entitled to live with representation, rights, and resources. I think these are the three elements which are very important to build into this gender responsive framework. And dignity and freedom from fear. You talked about fear and your quote on fear and joy or desire and dreams. So that is the transforming our perspectives and mindsets is a must to achieve true equality. Then you also mentioned about young women. India has one of the largest urban populations in the world and expected to become, expected to have more than half its population living in cities by 2050, with 65% under the age of 35. So you can imagine the young women cohort that will be there to both enjoy the rights, but also, be challenged by urban environments. So how do we ensure that this cohort becomes, of course, leaders, or they become leaders in sustainable urbanization in every sense of the word? And right now, there are many challenges, as many of you will discuss, about lack of safety in public spaces and workplaces, preferring to travel long distances, all that you have covered. So this is something that will need to be addressed. How does young women-led urbanization look like? What does it look like? And then there is the issue of the right to the city. I remember at Quito, we very much looked at some of these issues, and there was a big debate on the right to the city. And while many women today are accessing opportunities for education, employment, and well-being and political participation, their dreams, aspirations, and experiences of freedom and security are dependent on how the city itself responds. And we need to address that global developments, and the right to the city movement in the new urban agenda has advocated for the participation of women and girls in co-creating the city space with equal voice in governance and an end to structural discrimination and violence. And these frameworks must become an integral part of our city development agendas. As far as India and its policies are concerned, it has been steadfastly working to advance the Sustainable Development Goals, especially on SDG 5 and SDG 11 interface, through a comprehensive policy approach for gender transformation in cities. And its two flagship missions, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana and Swachh Bharat Mission, both of these have addressed the gender transformative goals to build affordable housing units and providing basic sanitation facilities to all across the country. And I'm sure more details will be given during this meeting. But also, very, very importantly, the Smart Cities program, the 100 Smart Cities. The Smart Cities program have really become, in some ways, a model for how intentional policies and gender mainstreaming of programs and missions can make world of a difference, a city of a difference. So that is something that I'm sure we are going to also hear from Kunal Ji, who is very much known as Mr. Smart City. So, and then the work of the Safetipin. I remember meeting Kalpana the first time when she came with this very exciting idea in New York, and then we had some very important meetings, conferences with celebrities taking up this idea. This whole concept of having a hotline or having some kind of an alert and an alarm when one goes around in the city for women and girls was at that time very innovative. And now it has gathered steam. There are that app now has become a role model for many others. But the germ of the idea is very important, that you are not defenseless when you face any threats, and that women have that backup in terms of their safety and security. And from there, of course, Safetipin and women's organizations have played an important role in advocating for women's safety over decades. And, UN Women's programs on safe cities at that time, we had covered so many cities, including in India. And you mentioned the gender audits, that was part of safe cities. So, Safetipin, I have known for the last 10 years, and they have not only leveraged the power of technology, and I was mentioning that how technology is a critical enabler of all that is a public good, and certainly safety and security of women and girls in cities is one of the major public goods that sustainable urban development can deliver. So they have leveraged technology, but also data and community engagement in making cities safer and more inclusive. And community engagement is critical, as I think they have. I think the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs has also found that it is critical to engage communities. They have worked on policy and program interventions with a range of urban stakeholders, including Mahua in India, and collected evidence-based data on city infrastructure and people's usage of public spaces in over 30 cities across the country and in 75 cities around the world. And then you have recently introduced She Rises framework. Responsive, inclusive, safe, and equitable spaces and services for gender transformation in cities. The framework centers not only on gender-sensitive economy, but also highlights the ethics of care, as you said, into city planning and is a useful framework to build responsive and equitable cities. Then there is this issue, you're almost forgetting about COVID, but we should not, because much has changed because of that COVID experience. And in the post-pandemic world, both in terms of resilience and rebuilding, we should be really looking at how we can not only build back better, but how can we build back differently? And that is something that also needs to be integrated into this new framework, the gender responsive framework. Now, there is a need to look at the vulnerabilities of young people and low-skilled workers and in the informal labor markets and informal economy. And city policy should look to diversifying the economy, invest into job creation, reduce poverty and inequality, and build fair and safe working conditions for all. And the active involvement of women workers across the economic ecosystem will assist in building their assets, skills, self-reliance, and solidarity, including against future shocks. You mentioned, Kalpana ji, very much the importance of gender desegregated data. And I like that juxtaposition with stories and the experience. It is critical as it provides the stakeholders with evidence. We are always asked in the gender business, what's the evidence? Why? Really? Is there a gender angle? What is it? So I think it's really important to have that. And then also it's important to invest in data, gender desegregated data, and also to use effective monitoring and evaluation of policies and programs, to use it for that, the M&E, monitoring and evaluation of what we are doing and how effective, what impact we are making. So there is a little bit of a to-do list that I have very quickly. Preventing and ending sexual violence in public spaces is possible with political will, dedicated and coordinated efforts. And women's safety is not only about crime statistics. It's not only about, violence against women, and freedom from fear, but it is a cross-sectoral issue. And public infrastructure projects and services must be responsive to that and must be engendered. Second thing is that institutional and governance reforms should focus on redistributive policies with an intersectional gender lens and increased voice, participation, and leadership of women, including and particularly in city governance. Because that's where, as we always used to say, if you remember, that's where the rubber hits the ground. Then the forward-looking means that governance should be inclusive of all stakeholders and policymakers, should adopt a feminist approach to urban development, and then women from the margins must be at the policy table. You know, those who hurt the most must be there to share what they undergo. And then only, you know, because that's the principle of Antodaya, Sarvodaya to Antodaya in the Indian context and Prime Minister Modi's mantra. But it is also about, it is in the spirit of Agenda 2030, leaving no one behind and reaching the farthest behind first. So it is in that spirit that we must also approach this. Cities to be socially inclusive and just would require building environment and gender-friendly infrastructure, settlements and services, access to clean water supply, functional sanitation, sewage, menstrual waste disposal, efficient fuel accessible transport, redressal for women, compact and mixed-use neighborhoods, inclusive streets, focusing on pedestrian needs. You were talking about walking cities. I remember those days too. And so on. So public transport system should be made accessible, safe, affordable, and reliable. Now, the future of cities is premised on being knowledge-based, driven by ideas and innovations, with widespread use of new technologies and digitization in all facets of urban living, bridging of digital divide and technology, not to control women and their mobility and choices, but to liberate them as equal and free citizens. And I think it's very important to also make sure that we engender not only the greenfield cities when we are building anew. We should take care that in the design itself there is a gender responsiveness inbuilt. But also when we are transforming brown or the existing cities in all its complexity and chaos and craziness. So finally, let me say that a city is about people. Their lives, their dreams, their health, their security, their well-being, and their enjoyment. It's about systems. And that is something we have to also address. Governance, transport, basic utilities, infrastructure, however organized, idiosyncratic, or impossible that they may seem. But we have to navigate that. And it's about producing and consuming, buying and selling. It's about spaces, especially public spaces, and where education, leisure, and work co-mingle. That's the conjunction as well. And it's a treasure trove of possibilities, as you said, a repository of everything that we live for and work for. And then it is the most dynamic theater. Why am I saying all this? Because it is the most dynamic theater for the working out of gender equality and women's empowerment. I really believe that. Because it's the axis of change. It's the definition of change, if there is one. and if not pursued intentionally and sincerely, for the delaying and thwarting of the gender equality project. So much is at stake here. You gave a very wonderful quotation. I want to give another one by Angela Carter, who famously said, "Some cities are women and must be loved. Others are men and can only be admired or bargained with. Let us make sure that the cities of today and the cities of tomorrow become Ardhanarishwars." And for those who are not from India, let me just explain that Ardhanarishwar is a concept intrinsic to the Indian ethos, and it means that every person, every divinity combines the male and the female power, Shakti, in one. So let us make sure that we will combine and continue to combine the Ishwar and Nari Shakti elements in them, so they are a part of a sustainable planet 50-50 and city 50-50 as a basic, the unit which leads up to a planet 50-50, and also in the Indian context, which is now again consecrated in the G20, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The whole world is your family, but also the whole city should be one family. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for echoing our ask for there should not be a singular lens while planning our cities. We have to be multi-sectoral and, of course, gender inclusive. Now, I would like to open up our opening panel, and I would like to invite Ms. Laura Ballesteros on the stage to join us. Ms. Laura Ballesteros is an expert in policy and regulation in road safety, mobility, and urban affairs. She was a former congresswoman at Mexico City Local Assembly. During the period between 2012 to 2015, she passed the new mobility law, establishing mobility and road safety as top priorities for public planning and budgeting. Since 2018, she has been the Global Secretary of the Women in Motion Center for Sustainable Leadership for Women Initiative. Currently, she is the Secretary of Social Management in Movimiento Ciudadano and a substitute senator in the Mexican Congress. Welcome, ma'am. May I now request Mr. Kunal Kumar to join us on the stage. Mr. Kunal Kumar currently holds the office of Joint Secretary and Mission Director of Smart Cities Mission under Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India. Earlier, he was a Municipal Commissioner at Pune Municipal Corporation, Maharashtra. He has been closely involved with the Smart Cities Mission, one of the most progressive missions for transformation of the urban landscape of the country. Welcome, sir. I would now request Mr. Sudhendu Sinha to join us on the stage. Mr. Sinha has an experience of over 30 years in operation, infrastructure planning, coordination, and management at field and policy making levels in Indian Railways. He has also served as Dean of the Indian Railway Institute of Transport Management and General Manager at the Center for Railway Information Systems. He is the advisor at the Infrastructure Connectivity and Electrical Mobility at NITI Aayog, the apex think tank of Government of India. Welcome, sir. We also have a video address from Mr. Stefan German, CEO of Foundation Botnar, Foundation Botnar is a Swiss philanthropic foundation working to improve the health and well-being of young people living in cities around the world. Since 2017, he has been leading the foundation in the next stage of development. I'll now hand over to Kalpana.
I will invite Laura first to give her address.
I'm sorry, I'm just preparing this. Thank you very much for the invitation, Kalpana. Congratulations on this amazing first 10 years of hard work, of a lot of legacy for women in our cities, especially here in India. And I am serious when I am saying the first 10 years, because they are only that, the first 10 years of a long life for Safetipin. So thank you very much and congratulations again for everybody. I am very excited to be here with you, not just because the opportunity to know better about India and all the challenges that you are facing and the great people that you have living here. Also because in this week I have been understanding how similar we are as communities, the Indian ones and the Latin American ones. So I think that this is also a great opportunity to understand us better, to learn from each other, and to build together, as the title of the conference says, to shape together an amazing next steps for everybody to make things happen, as also our great speaker says. And I want to thank for that also the opportunity to create this to INSA and all the great team of Women Mobilize Women. The J said, and all the team told me that they are working very hard to connect us. And I think that this will be like the beginning of a very good collaboration between our communities. And please, we have also to build something with Mexico. We'll be delighted to have you there. Well, I am here for inviting you to think what will be the next steps that we need to build when it comes about gender perspective in our cities, in the transport systems, of course, in the mobility agenda, of course, but especially in the urban agenda, because this is the future of the world. In Latin America, in Mexico, for example, 80% of the population lives in urban cities, 80%. So we understand that this is the major challenge that we already have. And when it comes about gender perspective, everybody is now very focused on the data and all the information that we already have, because the great work that you have been developing and everybody have been developing. Now we know that women have special challenges and special needs in our streets, in our public transport systems, in our cities. Now we know that. But what's next? I think that we should really be focusing on understand and to invest in those actions, that if we are able to invest in sustainable mobility, in transport and sustainable mobility, we are also investing in women. Why? Because the data are showing us this. If we are investing in electric vehicles, if we are investing in public spaces, vibrant ones and safe ones, if we are investing in road safety, if we are investing in pedestrian and cyclist mobility, if we are investing in the integration in all of these systems, we are investing in women, because we are the first users of the streets and the public transport systems, and we are the first users of the cities. The city belongs to us. This is what the data is telling us. So what we really do need to do as a next step is to put the money where our mouth is. If we are not putting the money in these strategies, in these great ideas, in this data that we already have, we are not going to make the point that this is a priority. And this should be the priority because, again, we are the first owners of our cities. And we have to repeat this to ourselves daily because we are. I would like to share with you some data from Mexico, and we have similar data with other Latin American cities. We are sharing a lot of challenges together, and the data is similar between some of the Latin American cities, because this will show you better what I am trying to say. In Mexico City and the metropolitan zone, we already are managing daily 32 million journeys per day. This is the situation of the 5th largest city in the world, Mexico City. So when we started our job, when I became Vice Ministry of Mobility back there, we were having a lack of information, a lack of data. We were facing a lot of challenges, but that one was one of the very first ones. And we started to work with the National University, a huge survey, an origins and destination survey, in order to understand how people is moving in the city, why, and of course, what is the mobility of the women back in the streets. So this was the first time that Mexico City tries this, that introduces in this great national survey the indicators for women. We receive a lot of international cooperation support here, but it was a very huge effort, a local one between a lot of stakeholders. I truly believe that one of the biggest opportunities that we have as cities is to build these strategic alliances to be better and to have everybody working together on the same objectives. So this data show us first of all that the 53% of the journeys in our big city are made by women. 53%. What does this is telling to us? We own our cities. We are the first users of our cities. We are the majority. It is not just about the niche agenda. We are the majority, so why we don't have the money on those journeys if we are the majority? If we want to serve the people, if we want to help the people, if we want to make their lives better, why we are not putting our money in the 53% of the journeys of the city? So that was our first insight in this survey. The second one, of 100% of the journeys that women are making, the 65% are made by public transport systems. 65%. Again, we own our city, we own our streets, and we are the owners of the public transport systems. Again, we are the majority in there. So why these journeys are not made for women and by women? Why? So I truly believe that this is crazy because we have been like normalizing all this stuff, and it is wrong. It's really wrong. There is nothing good at it. So the 65% of the journeys are very representative, made by public transport systems, because we already, all of us know, we have the first and the last mile. So the first and the last mile are made by walk. In some cases by public bicycle systems or bicycle systems, but mostly are made by walk. So why our streets looks like this? In all around the world, I mean, it is not just a problem of Latin America or Asia or whatever. I mean, our streets are mostly destroyed in most of the areas of our cities, and we are the first users of that. So we need to invest not just on public transport systems, we need to integrate the whole journey and the sidewalks, the safe intersections, the signing, the safety, the lighting, are part of this transformation. That is the reason why we need to think it as a whole and not just like separate parts trying to be together. There is a whole. The first and the last mile integrates all the journey in one big safe infrastructure. And because of the mobility of care, that I have like mixed feelings with the mobility of care concept, because I really understand that it is a way to think better how we can improve the mobility of women, because we are the ones who are taking care of the care agenda. But this is not fair either. I mean, the care work should be shared with men. And I really believe that one of the biggest next steps is to start sharing data, because we will change things, that the mobility of care will be also involving men, not just women. So I'm dreaming that in the next years, when we will absolutely be here sharing this conversation and this important data, I really have this dream that we says that if we invest in the mobility of care, we are also investing in men, because that will be representing a change. So that's what we need also to think. But speaking of mobility of care, that right now is one of the biggest characteristics of the mobility of women, we need to understand it better, that we need better infrastructure and different infrastructure in order to support it. So we need not just the universal infrastructure, we need different kind of buses, for example. Do you know that when you are buying a bus, for example, nobody cares in the governments about the size of the seats? Nobody cares about it. And this is a very important thing to think about it and to do when you buy one, because if you buy a bus with a small size, with small seats, you are going to put a lot of people over there. That is the reason why you are investing in such little spaces there, because of the money, because the ticketing. But the thing is that you're going to put a lot of people over there, and it will be very violent and toxic for women because of the space that you are trying to share with everybody. And it like allows a lot of violence over there because you don't have any space. So if you buy buses with bigger seats, with specific areas for children, for women, now we are talking, because we are trying in that way to support women in their journey. So this is like these little things that nobody cares about it and nobody thinks about it, that creates a better experience, a safe experience. In Latin America, as you know, we have a lot of challenges. One of them are the violence against women. Women are being killed, not just on the streets, on their own houses. This is a very important agenda to work with and to stop it, all the violence that we are facing. And unfortunately, when we try to talk about how we can make the experience better, like more comfortable, like more enjoyable, you know, most of the people back in my country, and especially in Latin America, we don't understand this, because what we are trying to say right now is that we want to be alive and get with life to our journeys and to our houses and to our work and to our destination. So this is a completely different conversation, but I truly believe that we start to work with this and with safety in all the public space and in the transport systems, we will eventually also get there. But it is important to say and to understand that right now, most of the women on the streets in Latin America are struggling for their lives. And well, I don't want to like talk a lot, but if you like, just give me a sign if I just have like enough time. I would like to share with you a couple of examples of how we have been facing these challenges and the actions that we are. 5 minutes, perfectly okay with that. So we have a lot of actions that has been going on back in Mexico City and also in other local states, Mexican cities. But I want to share with you three of them that right now are giving us the best results and also are showing us that we are creating a change because we are investing in sustainable mobility. So now we understand that if we invest in sustainable mobility, we're investing in women. The first, and this is a very important action for me because I led it. And it is about road safety. If we talk about the mobility of women when it comes about the streets with the first and the last mile, that all of them are made by walk, most of them at least, we need to understand that we need to improve the road safety. We need them to be safe on the streets and to get into their destination safe. So in Mexico City, we started this big and huge and ambitious program back on those days, 2015, to go for zero deaths on the road, zero. We worked with the Swedish government on this because they had at that time a lot of experience. They were the ones who built this vision, the vision zero deaths. And we create a huge regulation to decrease the speed limits of the vehicles, to build safer infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure on the streets, to have a better enforcement of the law on that, to have sanctions of that, and also to introduce a huge shift on the mobility culture on the cities. Two measures were the most effective on this: to reduce the speed limits and to build safe infrastructure in the city. I am a biggest believer that infrastructure creates culture. So it is very important to build new streets in order to improve the journeys and make it safer. So the results were amazing. In just 1 year, we decreased 35% the number of deaths on the road because these measures. And we were saving lives, actually saving lives. And women, again, were the first who was part of this equation because we were using the street a lot. We use the street a lot, as I mentioned. So the Vision Zero strategy in Mexico City was very successful. Now, later on, we applied this for 3 years. We got 65% of decrease of deaths on the road with 3 years of hard work. This was a very polemical thing for the population. Nobody wanted, everybody was very mad, but it was the right thing to do. Even the mayor lost like 35% of popularity in the service because these measures. And I remember when I knew that survey, I presented that very day my resignation because I was very worried about it. And I was like, okay, if you want a head of someone, this is me, but I know that this is the right thing to do and we should still stick to it and do it. But if you need some kind of a exit of this crisis, I understand this is my responsibility. And he was very, very smart. And I this is one of the reasons I respect him a lot. And he told me, no, Laura, you are not going anywhere. This is the right thing to do. And we'll keep this and we continue doing this. And so that's the story. So we had a very good results on that. It is a shame that the new government are not doing this again, and they are increasing the number of deaths in 75% in the last 5 years. So this is an example of how politics gets involved in everything, but also that the measures are the right way to decrease the number of deaths. The second program, and I will be very fast on this, is to invest in public transport systems, not just in Mexico City. A lot of Mexican cities are investing in public transport systems to expand them, to electrify them, and to connect it and integrate them. So we have been, like in Mexico City, increasing our network of public transport systems at least in 45% the last 10 years. So this is huge. We are trying to do it more. This government, the one that it is actually ruling, they are investing a lot on public transport infrastructure. And I think that's, of course, the right way to do it. And we are the first users as women of public transport systems. So this is a very good idea to make things change. The third one, it is a public program to support women journeys. This is happening in Jalisco, that it is another local state in Mexico City. They have wonderful people working on that, a beautiful team of women working on that. And they started to work in subventions for the price of the ticket of the public transport systems because we spend a lot on that and we are the first users of the public transport systems. So they started a program with a card, that card that has public money, government money, in order to be like more supportive on that and make cheaper the cost of the journeys. So this has been a very successful program right now. At least 15% of the population already have one, especially students and especially moms. So they are supporting a lot of this. I think, and I truly believe that when we are talking about transport, mobility, and all this transformative agenda, we really need to understand that we are also talking about a social agenda, an agenda that needs more justice and more dignity for the daily life of the people. So if we are able to create that, I think that we are in the right way. So thank you very much.
I'm not going to say anything. These were wonderful words. Mr. Kunal, over to you. Yes.
I wish I could ask everyone to stand and sit, because after two such enthralling speeches, I have to get them out of a trance, sort of. Because a mere mortal stands here. I'm not Mr. Smart City. I dare say I'm learning on the job at the expense of the government. Nevertheless, I'll start my brief conversation with a couple of personal anecdotes. I remember the kind of pushback I faced when just after class 12th, I was preparing to send my daughter. In fact, she was preparing to go to the United States for her studies. And all the talk was about, if it was your son, it is fine. But why are you thinking of sending your daughter out after class 12th? And how that conversation took place. I just reflect on that in this gathering today. There's another conversation I had very recently, which is very interesting. I should mention this. Now my son is applying. And one of the essays that he was submitting, he had to write about something which is a misnomer. For example, Rhode Island. It's not an island. It's called Rhode Island. And he picked up the word ladybug. And he said, this beetle bites. It has venom. It also swallows other bugs. It definitely is not like a lady. Either ye अच्छा जा रहा है, ये सही जगह जा रहा है. Iski thinking. It is thinking right. So, and when I was studying in the States myself, at Kennedy School, we had something called, I forget the name, I think it was Implicit Assessment Test, IAT. It's a test on personal attributes. You come to explore yourself in areas you don't even think you are like that. And that actually pointed out a lot of gender bias in a lot of us, which we thought we were immune to. It's because we don't even come to know how our nurturing has actually seeped into our brains and how we think, unless we are made to think in a particular way and then it comes out. So the point I'm making is, if that is the case in very personal lives, I'm sure when we are dealing with cities and city systems and smart cities and urbanization and billions of people, I think we need to do a much better job at understanding this paradigm of gender and gender bias and gender framework before we actually delve into doing work, because we may actually end up doing pretty wrong instead of doing good unless we are very sensitive to these issues. And as Mrs. Puri pointed out, we are building back after COVID. And I remember one news article I wrote, I read, and after that I got I actually read that report. This was about New York and the city getting concerned about whether it will get its creative economy remain in the same shape post-COVID, because it understood that cities are about people. New York is known for its financial prowess, its services industry, financial services industry, its entertainment industry, its software industry, and all that. But the city knew that unless people stay in the city, all this could vanish pretty fast. And the choice that has emerged post-COVID, I'll not go into the debate of work from home, good, bad, ugly, but work from home is going to be a reality. And with the kind of, as again, Mrs. Puri pointed out, we are headed into a knowledge, technology, digital-driven economy. And in that era, we may think that work from home will become a much more prominent thing than we've had so far. And therefore, when people have choice, they can stay in cities which deliver. They can stay in cities where they love being instead of being in cities where they have to work. And therefore, they could be working in a city which is not very amenable to women or to people as such, but they don't need to be located in that city because they can work from a city which is doing better. So when we look at the future and we say that we're going to be a nation of 1 billion urban people by 2047, and all the statistics about we being 35% urban, I always debate these statistics because, these are very conservative. Our definitions, if we go by the Mexican definition, we are 67% urban already. Okay. So it's our definition which says we have a very rigid definition of urban population. We have 3 criteria. More than 400 persons per square kilometer, more than 5,000 people at one place, and more than 75% of male residents being in non-agricultural sector. But if you go by the Mexican definition, which is 1,500 people per square kilometer, we are already 67% urban. So let's not get into the numbers. We're going to be 1 billion people in urban areas by 2050. And currently, we have the second largest urban population in the world after China. And for our cities to deliver in this way in going forward, being economic powerhouses, being able to give the kind of support they have to give to the national goals of becoming a developed country, having a $32 trillion economy by 2047, having $20,000 per capita of income in 2047, it's a no-brainer. It has to work for both men and women. And therefore, our concept of city development and smart cities as such, it's funny, in some conferences, they call these 100 cities as smart cities and the others as non-smart cities because they're not part of the smart cities mission. They're not non-smart cities. They're not part of the mission. Fact of life is that all the 5,000 cities we have in our country have to be smart cities. It's not a choice. It's a reality. It's a requirement. It's something that you have to be if you have to really deliver in the future. And this has required us to do a lot of reorientation in the way we have thought about cities in our country. All of us know that we have been sort of reluctant urbanizers. Still hear debates of people who come into conferences and say, now enough is done, now no more migration should happen, people should stay where they are, our cities are getting too congested. And most of the times these are people who are already in cities, so it's like the bell jar effect, I'm in, now you be out. And this is because we've always thought cities as problems, cities as challenges. We can't, of course, where there are opportunities, there will lie challenges. But it's about maximizing the opportunities and minimizing the challenges. How do you go about doing that? In the most simplistic way, the way our smart cities mission has been posed, it deals with these issues at a larger level, and that's something which I don't say myself. I've seen a lot of delegates who I interact with from various other countries echo. I especially would mention a senior minister from the Ministry of MLIT, this is Land and Industry and Transport, I think, Japan, who was here, and he said that India's smart cities concept is very broad. We would like you to come and speak with us because we think that using technology to improve lives is all that smart cities is about. But here you are talking about, people at the center, being community-centric, being inclusive, being sustainable, driving climate outcomes, looking at things in a broader interdisciplinary perspective, which is something which is just not talked about when you talk about smart cities in other parts of the world. And I'll just give you one example. We've evolved. So when we used to talk about smartifying sort of our streets, when we started talking about smart streets, we used to think about streets which look good. In fact, I have been in conferences and conversations where people used to say that streets with Wi-Fi are smart streets. And then they would go into saying that streets with better footpaths and then utilities being underground are smart streets. And then now we've evolved to say that streets which are accessible to all, work for all abilities, all ages, all genders, and provide equitable space to all kinds of transport modes, whether be it public transport, non-motorized transport, or cars, etc., are smart streets. Now, this evolution is something that is staggering over a period of 5 years. And sometimes when people ask me, what's the progress? You've not built smart cities. I look at this evolution as something very extraordinary, whereas, if you look at just numbers and figures, they don't get reflected in those. But this change in orientation itself is a very big thing to celebrate for us. In fact, and this is not me talking, these are engineers, these are planners, these are young professionals joining our municipal systems who are talking about these things now. And so if you have a street with footpath, with good medians, good trees, Wi-Fi, yes, it looks good, it looks smart. But if it minimizes conflicts between pedestrians and cars, if it minimizes conflicts between cyclists and cars, if it allows for all abilities and people with all abilities and genders and ages to walk and be freely accessing the road, they are smart streets. And this is how we've evolved. And now our cities are into developing such smart streets. Again, example of the public transportation system. And both the previous speakers have talked about it. We've invested a lot into public transportation over the last few years. We've had thousands of buses join our bus systems across these cities. We've recently, the Government of India has launched another green urban mobility initiative where 10,000 electric buses are being again pushed into these cities. They will now start to ply in the very, very near future. However, again, it's the reorientation in the approach. Post-COVID, we found people were weaned away from the public transport system. They just didn't want to access the public transportation system because of social distancing. And everywhere the ridership fell off. And, public transportation systems are not profit-making. They survive from hand to mouth. And that really was a backbreaker. Even Delhi Metro, which had a ridership of about 7 million, suddenly fell to less than 1 million. And everyone else across the system was suffering. So we decided to bring everyone together and think about how do we get people back into public transport. And again, the approach is what I want to talk about. We actually did handlebar surveys. We talked to people. We actually talked to 200,000 people on streets and asked them. We could have very well gone ahead and done our infrastructure approach and said, we will build this, we'll bring in more buses and this and that. But this is the nuanced approach that within the Smart Cities mission and this collaboration with the community and talking to people, and then emerged problem statements, which were then curated. And those curated problem statements were put forward before the the innovation community that our country has. And now, I believe 16 of those solutions that emerged, first of all, we've awarded those solutions and now they're getting deployed across cities to bring back people. And these are digital, non-digital solutions about how do you plan your trips, how do you access buses better, and how do you improve safety on buses, how do you improve ticketing on buses, and so on and so forth. All this not because we thought this is the best thing to do, but because 200,000 people echoed that these are the areas you work on so that you get us back on buses. So this is just about the approach. And Kalpana talked about data. In fact, I vividly remember 2016 when I was attending a conference which was organized by Tata Trusts. It's one of the one important philanthropic organizations in our country. And the head of Tata Trust, Mr. Ratan Tata himself, was there. And so we were awarded for certain things that we had done in Pune. And I approached him and I said, it's fine that we get awarded once in a while, but we don't have systems to work on data in our cities. And the government recruitment system, the entire policy on what departments you can have in municipal corporations and all will take years to change. So can we create a hack? Can Tata Trust put a couple of people in Municipal Corporation of Pune and just begin this journey, and let's see if it evolves well. Maybe we set an example for others. So that was the first city data officer. 2016, we had a first city data officer in the country. And then Surat had one. So we were 2 cities with city data officers. And in 2018, based on the experiences, we created a strategy called the Data Smart Cities strategy, with a 3-pillar approach of people, processes, and platforms. We invested in people. How do you invest in people? Both augment people and build capacity. And then you invest in processes. How do you build city policies? How do you work on collaborations on data, et cetera, et cetera. And then you work on platforms for sharing data and all. And now I'm happy to state that 2020, we were from 1 to 100 in 4 years, and all the 100 cities had data officers. And today we are now currently working in 220 plus cities, where they are now in the process of having a good sound data team. So from 1 to 220 in almost like 5 to 7 years. And these cities are now sort of they have evolved systems, which are still getting perfected, but have at least some bare bones skeletal systems to work on data. And that has started to show results. Kalpana talked about the urban outcomes framework. We just released 100,000 data points about our cities in the public domain 2 days back. And this is just the beginning. In fact, we've collaborated with N number of organizations. Today we are, the funny thing is sometimes people ask, what is your staff strength at the ministry? The technical answer to this is 30 people. We work with 30 people managing a program of what? If you ask me the $1 billion thing, it's a $22 billion program. But if you really ask me how many people I have in my team, I can't answer that, because we have 113 different organizations working with us. There are tons of people who are got attached to us. I can't number everyone. And all of them are part of the team. They are all part team Smart Cities. So while technical answer to this question is 30, sometimes it gets written in file. When I ask for some more people, then the file comes back and says, report how many you have already. And I can't, because I don't know how many people are working with me. So this is the kind of collaborative strength that we have developed. And for example, OMI, the Ola Mobility Institute, is also Aishwarya sitting here. She's also one of the partners, and so on and so forth. There are many. And so UOF, the Urban Outcomes Framework, is not the outcome of one knee-jerk reaction. It's the outcome of 7 years of hard work on data smart cities, data strategy, creating data teams in 100 cities, and then being able to successfully put out this data. And the second thing I'll mention is a recent report which was released at the hands of the Honorable President of India. We did this on the 27th of September. It's called SDGs, Localizing SDGs Outcomes in the Smart Cities in India. Probably the only Government of India program which went ahead and has quantified SDG achievement across 100 cities through its interventions and initiatives. And this is a report that I have sent to our G20 Sherpa as well, because time and again in G20 meetings, because I convene also the Urban 20 group, time and again it's been talked about, building on SDG work, taking it, localizing it and all, but there seemed to be a lack of a measurement system. And we've now come across that battle, and we've actually created this report. And now each of the smart cities can very well spell out which are the SDGs they have worked on, what is the quantified outcome they have achieved. And this is something that other government programs can also follow. I wouldn't take much more time. I think we've evolved under the Smart Cities program to have these interdisciplinary lenses. We now, don't only talk about number of projects we've completed, the amount of money we've spent. We talk about campaigns. We talk about how we've affected lives of people. We have, for example, a program called Nurturing Neighborhoods program. The focus is on children and caregivers and women and elderly, where we are trying to transform neighborhoods into nurturing neighborhoods, and we are trying to transform communities into communities which nurture their neighborhoods. Then we have a Streets for People program, where under the Streets for People program, we're talking about mobility from the lens of a user. It's a user-centric approach. It's about having eyes on the street. It's about moving, not only about talking about roads, but also talking about mixed-use development. It's also talking about redesigning your building code so that your spaces become more safe and become more accessible for walking and cycling. We have another program called Cycles for Change, where a lot of emphasis is being given on cycle to work, cycle to school. I, for one, have also been cycling to my office space for quite some time. It's been more than 3 years. Although over the last couple of months, and especially this month, people have told me not to because of the brilliant weather outside. But otherwise, I love to do that. And we've seen a lot of conversions happening in cities. As we speak, we have entrusted a lot of premier institutions in the country, IITs, IIMs, and the School of Planning and Architecture to do research studies and impact studies on how much this has actually happened. So we don't want to speak offhand. We've got the best institutions in the country. I'll also talk about the partnership we have with Safetipin. We have the RISES framework that we had a discussion. We piloted it in 6 cities. The results of that will be out sooner than later, maybe in less than a month. And then we would ramp it up to across all the other cities as well. And we'll write to all the state governments to take it beyond the 100 cities as well, so that we are able to talk in a research-driven, evidence-driven manner, which is so very important because we need to channel our resources appropriately. We need to take the right decisions based on evidence, and the approach itself took a lot of deliberations to create, and now we are all impatient to see the results of this and action in all the cities. Well, I can go on and on. There are a lot of things that I can discuss, but I'll stop here. Thank you for being patient with my speech. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think we've learned so much from all these speeches. Mr. Sinha, would I invite you to present your words?
So thank you. At the onset, let me my compliments to the Safetipin and all their partners in organizing this particular event. Definitely, it goes without saying that this is a very relevant one. But as I was being driven in the morning to this place, I was just trying to find out that at NITI, there is a vertical that takes care of women, and there is another one that takes care of urban, so cities. So I was very difficult, I was trying to find out that how precisely I am relevant for this particular thing. See, so I was on my own journey kind of thing. So I realized that, okay, it was Gandhiji at the station Pitt Maritzburg when he was thrown out of train, then such a big movement started. Again, for the second time, when the same Gandhiji, when his train stopped on a bridge, and he came down and he saw a woman and he switched over to the minimalist style of living. So again, train was involved. When Rosa Parks decided that she will not offer the seat in the bus, a bus is involved. A movement started. When Clara Zetkin gave her signal speech in Germany from a station is involved. When Nirbhaya incident happened, bus is involved. So I realized that I too have a place. At least I provide the venue or the vehicle. So that area is definitely with me. So yes, as you scroll down the list of the most livable cities, first 25, so it is Barcelona, Vienna, Stockholm, Copenhagen, Helsinki. Shift the page. None of the Indian cities. Third page. At the end of it, you find Singapore. Next page. Tokyo. None of the Indian cities are there. So that is what is distressing. And when you check the parameters, then you find that yes, gender thing is definitely one of the very, very pronounced parameters. That means there's something wrong, something somewhere wrong. But the good thing is that in our country, the processes, the planning process especially, and of course, you see it in so many pronouncements of our own Prime Minister, that we have moved on and we are moving very fast from kind of women sensitive to women responsive to women centric to women led. Now these are the steps that we have moved ahead with. Now it's women led. That is the stage we are in. So it gives a lot of opportunity to us to plan our new cities as well as the existing ones, the smart as well as those who are not in the smart kind of ambit, to ensure that, they are women-led. But the problem is, allow me, that the amount of women that I see in this particular conference, probably the entire transport system of India made together would not be having so many of them. So when I'm curating a policy, I have to look for the women's requirement from a male lens. It becomes very, very difficult. The other day when I was talking to one of the OEMs, and I was telling him that, the step, the height of a step that a trouser-clad woman and a sari-clad woman can negotiate are different. He was in so liberal appreciation of this observation. He says, "Are you a design person?" I said, No. I have nothing to do it, but you just observe. So in sari case, it could barely be 4 to 5 inches. In trousers, it could very well be 6 to 8 inches. So if you are planning for, bus, how to negotiate, you have to take care of it, or else it will be very, 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 very difficult. And they did agree. Not only that, what I'm also watching is that number of OEMs, if you see their assembly lines, gradually women's participation is rising. So I was checking up with one of them that, is it a calculated move? Is it because of your gender sensitivity or gender responsiveness? They said, no, sir. What their observation has been, that it is because of the dexterity level of women is distinguishingly high. That is the reason why, of course, now assembly lines are generally robotic supported. But yes, for the checks at different stations on the assembly line, they keep women to check that it is going all great. So this is what is happening. If I borrow from GIG's 5 principles on women and transport, it's a wonderful thing that they have created. So they talk of studying mobility pattern. They talk of crafting mobility services based on those patterns. They talk of ensuring safety and security, empowering them, including that of digital empowerment, and of course, creating a lot of awareness and behavioral changes. Now, what can I give you Safetipin as an agenda? Could it be possible that you can come out with some sort of gender audit framework that could be, applied for, say, terminals and airports and interstate bus terminals kind of thing? Can you come out with those kind of audit framework? And if on a bigger scale, can you come out with a checklist or gender checklist? Because I'm telling you, if you leave it to me, my stretch of imagination will not go beyond washrooms or maybe beyond creches. I can't think beyond that. You can probably. So it's time for people like you and organizations like Safetipin to collaborate with the government and to kind of create those framework that can always be applied in policy. My best wishes to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, I really loved the word you used, Madam Puri, the new normal of gender equality. And actually, all of you spoke about the new normal of gender equality. Before we finish this session, we have a quick video from Mr. Stefan German from Botnar.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Stefan German. I'm the CEO of Fondation Botnar. Welcome to this wonderful conference, and it's my great pleasure to be participating and sharing with you a few reflections. I hope this conference gives you quite a bit of insight around the participation of young people in making cities safer places. Today, or this year, Safetipin is celebrating 10 years since their start. It's wonderful to be a partner of Safetipin, and it's specifically a privilege to work with them under our Fit for the Future program. Safetipin has done incredible important work of engaging with young people, specifically young women, to ensure that cities become much safer places, not just for themselves, but for everyone else. We are aware that digital technologies pose some risks, and therefore we urge everyone, specifically city governments who are deploying digital technologies, to ensure that they are adhere to human rights. Last year, Safetipin, for example, under one of its key programs, engaged over 400 young people, of which 280 were women, to engage and map cities from a safety point of view. It is great to see such initiatives that really help to enhance young people's governance in being engaged in the planning of their cities to make cities a better place for all. I would like to thank Safetipin and wish them for the next 10, 15 years all the best in their journey to reach many, many more cities across not only India, but the entire world. Thank you.
Thank you. I must say we are only 18 minutes late. That's not too bad compared to normally the way conferences go at the India Habitat Center. So I would like to thank everyone on the panel. It was, I didn't feel the time because really there was so much useful information for those of us working in the sector that all of you shared. And I think the partnerships, I truly appreciate the fact that all of you said partnerships with civil society organizations, with think tanks, with others is the way to go forward, and communities. So the movement towards that is something we all appreciate. Thank you once again. I would just say we can have a quick group photo. Please join us for tea right now, and then we'll come back for the next panel.
Yeah, wonderful. To be ready. It also then shows that it is